This computer.
Mm.
We are recording right now. Okay, so
Excellent.
everybody,
Excellent.
welcome to the, I think it's the third show.
The third.
And we
It's
changed
the third show.
show. Yes. And it was Nathan and Richard show, and then it was the Richard and Nathan show, and as following that theme of changing names, today it is the Nate and Rick show. So welcome to the Nate and Rick show. And in the spirit of moving things right along so people don't get too bored, I'm going to turn it over to Nate because he has a subject he wants to talk about first. It's all yours, Nate.
Well, first of all, I'm on a hotspot because Wi-Fi here is ancient. So if I go, I go. No, I want to talk about, I wanted to talk about poetry and music, specifically lyric writing, but I also wanted to use it as an intro, the fact that the made up controversy over Bob Dylan as a poet laureate,
Okay.
the absurdity that anybody would challenge that.
Okay.
I mean, you have to be kind of a small person with nothing to do to spend your time challenging Nobel laureates anyway. I mean, if you gave the Nobel Prize to some guy who fashioned lampshades out of people, that would be worth challenging. But Bob Dylan as a Nobel winner, that's, first of all, it's interesting because most people, whether anybody knows this or not, in the literature world, they use a certain number of strategies to be on the list.
You froze, my friend.
You have to teach at certain schools. You have to be connected to Harvard. There's all sorts of stuff connected to it. You don't find no politicking, no late night dinners in New York City. Yeah, let's try to get hooked back up and see what happens.
You want to cancel this and hook back up?
Unless it came back.
It did come back.
Okay, let me make sure that I'm still on the same Wi-Fi I'm supposed to be on. So make sure I'm hooked up, because all right, let's see if we can hang in here. If we can't, we may have to figure out another time to do it, but we'll figure it out. But did you hear the part I just said that Dylan won the Nobel clean, which is unusual, right? I'm not sure it's all political, but I think the sciences are a little easier to determine who deserves them. And in literature, it's so subjective that, you got to be there. You got to be on the playing field. And so I don't think Dylan was on the playing field. That's what I find interesting about it. I can't imagine Bob Dylan or Bob Dylan's publicist, who seems to do nothing except say Bob Dylan has a new record. I mean, doesn't need to do anything else, right? I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying why spend your time going around to all the outlets when all you have to do is send out an email?
Cushy job.
So I think Dylan won it clean, and then a bunch of people who were less successful jumped up and said, well, he's not really literature, which is horseshit, but, and then we're getting into definition, right? So I was thinking of...
Their objection was poetry. It's not really poetry. Lyrics are not poetry.
Lyrics are not poetry, but they serve different purposes, and I may argue with you that my father says, and has said for years, and he said it enough that I think people recognize that he's the one who said it. He used to say that in a battle between songs with lyrics and, music and poetry, music always won. And his point was that I think his point just had to do with the concentration it takes to take poetry seriously, which that's another great rumor, that poems have to be difficult, right? Great poetry isn't necessarily difficult. But he makes one point, and his point is this: I think poetry is significantly harder to get your point across in. You don't have the option of using another medium, music, to change the meaning of something, right? Because I bought my guitar just because I like this so much. I figured out that in blues and soul, probably the most used line is "woke up this morning." It's got to be in 67,000 songs.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that simple line, if played like this with a minor, right? I woke up this morning, Blues come down like rain, right? Very sad, right? It can also be angry. Well, I woke up this morning, baby. Right? You can do, oh, that's all it takes. Well, poetry sits on the page, and the reader has to decide what the mood is, right? But
Okay.
it would be very, very hard to take a song like, it's very, very hard to make a sexy swinging song out of St. James Infirmary. You can swing it, but it's still not going to be sexy. It's still going to be kind of, and you can't, as proven by Clapton's soft rock version of Layla, you know, how you approach lyrics with music is it makes significant changes. I mean, if I'd heard Layla as the soft rock version first, I never would have even liked the song.
Really?
Well, it just sits shitty for me. I can't, but it has to do with the fact that the Derek and the Dominoes version is so propulsive, so powerful, and so yearning. It's so yearning. And to me, the soft one takes the yearning away. It turns it into a sad little bad jazz club tune. And I get
that song.
So many people disagree with me.
Well, that particular song, which is way up there in my charts. I appreciate both versions. It's interesting that you're mentioning that. The first version, of course, the electric version, has one of the great guitar hooks of all time to drive it along.
Of course.
I was never particularly fond of the prolonged ending to the original Layla. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand all the grandiose piano work at the end and all. And then when I heard you
were never a late night DJ.
And then when I heard the acoustic version, and I knew the story behind the song, I heard all this heartbreak coming out.
That's funny. That's funny, man.
Yeah.
Most of Clapton's acoustic soft rock stuff, including his take on John Martyn's songs, have always left me a little cold.
Really?
Yeah, but you know, I didn't like his take on Cocaine because the J.J. Cale version is so utterly skanky.
Nobody should try to when J.J. Cale puts that out, I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you do your version of a J.J. Cale song.
A lot of J.J. Cale out there being covered.
After Midnight, another J.J. Cale. I mean, if you heard the original J.J. Cale of After Midnight, you would have said, Eric, don't do that song.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have the luxury of sitting here and criticizing a man whose body of work is extensive, right? So, you know, he doesn't fucking care what I think, for good reason, right?
Yeah.
Any more than honestly I care what he thinks, which is part of the reason that I'm so incredibly successful.
It works that way. Definitely works that way. No.
So what do you think, Dylan? You say Dylan can't be a poet, huh?
No, I didn't say that. Actually, I have a cousin who I love very, very much, who's an author, a writer, and she was very upset when Dylan won the Nobel Prize for literature, and I won't argue with her at all because I really respect her opinion as far as literature is concerned, and she. What can you say to somebody who objects to that, who is an author themselves? I'm not gonna change her opinion, and I have to honor it. That's just the way it is. People who are not writers, and she is a writer, a serious writer. People who are not writers like you, I mean, you are a writer, not a writer, but people, you, she. Your critiques of something like that, I have to listen to. Somebody who has never attempted to write anything their entire lives and tells me that, Bob Dylan is this or Bob Dylan is that, I just, you don't have the stones to venture that opinion. But my cousin does. You do. If your dad said to me, "I'm okay with that," I'd say,
honestly. I don't,
Well, you froze. Say it again.
Yeah, I said, things are different now. One of the things that's different now is that we only had a brief period of time when the universities were great centers for art, right?
Right.
So they generated all these people who worked really hard to become what I would consider to be serious artists and serious writers and serious musicians. You know, and it really was only the GI Bill to about 1985 when Reagan ruined the world, right? So, middle of it, academics is I mean, universities used to value the philosophy, the idea of how to think. Even community colleges took that seriously. But now, of course, the great horseshit line that they sell everybody is that you go to get a job. But you don't go to get a job. You go to learn how to think and deal with people you don't agree with, so that when you work at a job, you can get up in the morning and go to work. That's what a university's for.
Well, yeah, but when they stop teaching civics in schools and public schools, that's when, you know, and Penny agrees with me on this, that's when the huge change began, in that
Yeah.
you go to school for just the reason you go to college is so you can get a good job. It's not to learn how to think. It's not learn how to think. It's not to be open to other methods of thinking. It's to get a job. It's an employment agency.
It's an employment agency, and not a particularly good one. That's the irony.
No, it's not. I mean, from what I'm hearing on reports on TV now, with parents who are taking their children back in after going to, quote, Ivy League schools, it's kind of tough to imagine that.
Well, you go to Harvard so that you can you go to Harvard so you can make money later. You don't go to Harvard because it's a great college. I hate to say that. I hate to say that, but
I think, you know, I don't have anything to base this on. This is really pulling this out of my butt. I don't think it's as easy to get a job out of Harvard as it used to be. I mean, graduating from Harvard is no longer, Tom Rush graduated from Harvard. I mean, it's no longer a ticket to paradise.
I think it depends on what you're doing. You know,
Yeah,
if you're the right guy, if you go into the business, you go into the business school, you're a lawyer. But
yeah.
if you're going to go ahead and get a fine arts degree from Harvard, you might as well just shoot yourself in the head and go to a community college, because it's the same damn degree, and you can do it for $1,000 a month while you work. I mean,
Will Hunting said you could do it for $1.10 in late charges from your public library.
very nicely done. Very nicely done.
That, you know, the brains.
How do you like them apples? How do you like them apples?
All right. Now, what I wanted to talk about today, because we want to keep our show within time.
Within parameters of, even though we're freezing, you may have to do this again, but what the hell?
Am I freezing a lot too?
No, it's just, I knew we were going to have trouble today for some reason.
Okay.
If it fucks up, we'll try it again.
Yeah. I want to talk about Donald Trump. And, you know, not a new subject. Not everybody out there has got an opinion about Donald Trump. But that's what I would do if I were you. I would get something to soothe this. Two things have bothered me lately. Number one, newscasters who are extremely critical of Donald Trump, but after whatever their news is, will say, of course, we're wishing him a speedy recovery. Right? Why are they wishing that motherfucker a speedy recovery? The man is basically responsible for over 200,000 deaths, and they're wishing the man a speedy recovery. I'm not saying wish him ill. Don't wish him anything. You know, there is no need to be politically correct with a man that has done this much harm to so many people and say you wish him a speedy recovery. Okay, that's number one. Number two.
That's a big number one.
You know, I'm going to go out on a limb here. All right. If I got the news right now, if you got the news right now that Donald Trump passed, what would be your first reaction?
I'd be disappointed.
Really?
I'd be disappointed.
Why?
Yeah, because that guy needs to be repudiated in a way that his death would never allow.
That's not going to happen. You know that.
I think he's going to get his ass handed to him. I think this is going to be a very interesting election. I think it's going to be a turnout election. I think it's going to be a turnout election on the Democrat side, and it's going to be a clusterfuck, but I think he's going to get his ass handed to him.
I got you. But he's out of office. Now he's subject to civil and criminal liabilities. So for 10 years, that'll be tied up in court. He's going to be 84 fucking years old at that.
Oh no, I'm not talking about him going
Nothing's
to
going to
jail.
happen to him. You know,
You know, if he
so
dies, he dies.
if he loses the election big time, he's going to say he was cheated, blah, 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 you know, and he'll start a new TV show, and Fox News will still go.
I think he'll leave the country.
Well, he may do that. But all I'm saying is I do not wish the man death. I'm not saying that at all. I don't wish that on anybody. But all I'm saying is if I found out that he had passed, would I be upset? Hell no. I think, you know, it would probably help in the fight against COVID because of what he's doing, both to the Food and Drug Administration, to any other governmental agency that's trying to fight this disease. And Donald Trump is just throwing every monkey wrench he can into the machinery. So I feel that would be a help. That's point number 2. Stop with the political correctness about Donald Trump's illness. Is there anybody out there who, when they found out he had COVID, didn't say, "Oh, yeah, all right, you know, the motherfucker's got COVID," you know? And after he had super spreader event after super spreader event, and he winds up with COVID, and what is it now? 35 Trumpites have COVID right now.
You know, if this is tape,
you're frozen, my friend. You're frozen. I'm going to have to truck on, and yeah, you're unfrozen now. You're fine. I think that that Donald Trump.
I heard you, but I heard you in slow motion.
Oh, yeah. I think Donald Trump is somebody who would best serve America being off the scene. I'm not saying dead, but definitely off the scene, silent, whatever's going to happen. Thirdly, I just heard this morning that the debate commission said that the next debate is going to be remote.
He won't do it.
He won't do it.
He won't do it. No way.
So
he's got no incentive to do it.
So if he won't do it, what happens? Well, there's going to have to be spin from the Trump organization somehow that, for whatever reason it is, doing something remotely is unfair to him. I mean, Joe Biden's got to do it remotely. The moderator's got to do it remotely.
Yeah, but
unfair to him. So
it's all about presenting himself as less cowardly than Joe Biden.
Yeah. So my fondest wish for Donald Trump and America is that the COVID that he has, and incidentally, did you hear that all the doctors at Walter Reed had to sign NDAs?
I'm not surprised, because that Sean, whoever the fuck his name is clearly the lionest motherfucker that walked on the planet. I mean, and I'll say that to his face and he can sue me. He's clearly lying.
Yeah. So, and this guy had the kitchen sink thrown at him as far as drugs are concerned, and
maybe.
Yeah. So the best thing for me that can happen is that these drugs have not cured this, quote, cured him the way he thinks he has, and he relapses. And I know that sounds terrible to say. I don't want him to suffer. I don't want him to have to go through what 210,000 people went through. But I want him to know the full impact of what happens with this disease when you're not the president of the United States and you don't get drugs that are not available to anybody but a handful of people. I'd like him to experience that. And then he can talk to us about the disease. That's what I wanted to say about Donald. And
I have to sort of make an assumption here, which is that before this was a known thing in the U.S. and because of my travels through Amsterdam and through Schiphol Airport, that I actually had this. And it was 4 weeks of hell. And it was like not knowing anything yet, because this was before they even could have told us, right? This was when the Chinese were kind of sitting on it and the Europeans didn't quite know what it was. And it wasn't, I don't think it was malice, to be honest with you. I think they were trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And it had already spread quite a bit. I couldn't breathe for 3 weeks. Not head cold breathe, but couldn't breathe. Would wake up in the middle of the night with no air, sit up and wait to start breathing again. I had to talk myself through breathing, and I've been active athletically 5-6 days a week my entire life. So when it comes to breathing, I can make myself breathe. I know how to do it through pain. I know how to do it through exertion. And I did that every night for hours sitting up. Couldn't figure out what it was. Didn't have a fever, so I didn't go to the doctor because, well, pneumonia doesn't usually present without some kind of low-grade fever. And I would think I was a little better, and then I would slip back into feeling that way. And I mean, I coughed up. By the end of it, I was coughing up a tiny little bit of blood, mostly because I'd irritated the hell out of my lungs and bronchial passageways, and it never got serious. But it had everything that the symptoms listed except the headache. And I had vision stuff and all sorts of things, hearing, and it was gruesome. And it was gruesome in a way that I literally spent the next month after having been sick, terrified to go to sleep.
Sure.
Just terrified. Sure that I wouldn't wake up. And, it probably 30 to 40% of the people who get this thing have a really, really bad case of it. They can call it moderate if they want, but it's bad. And if you think that 30% of 7 million people is something you laugh at and say, well, we beat this disease, fuck him.
Yeah.
And he's a coward. I hate cowards. I hate them.
I've had pneumonia 3 times. And the most severe case I ever had was, as you put it, incredibly frightening to me because I'm horrendously claustrophobic. And
that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like.
And not being able to breathe is a claustrophobic's nightmare. If you can't get air. And I was 24/7 in the throes of the most extreme claustrophobia imaginable because of this. Now, when I think of people who have COVID and develop this lung incapacity and are anywhere near or more severe than what I was, because when I'm hearing your lungs basically turn to stone sometimes with this thing, I panic when it wells up a panic in me when I hear about it, right?
Oh, me too.
So the fact that this guy has caused this to happen and people still do him the honor of wishing him a speedy recovery, I just don't understand it. What do people need to be outraged? What do they need to be non-politically correct? What do they need to finally say, you have COVID, now suffer through it. I have absolutely no problem with what you're going through because you asked for it.
Yeah, but you know what, Rich? This is after World War II, and Hitler checked out, right? When they tried all those guys at The Hague, they wanted to kill them in a speedy and expeditious manner. They didn't want to cause them to suffer. And as a matter of fact, when they were being held, the international community watched it very carefully to see that they weren't tortured or turned over to assassins. The problem is, to remain civilized, you have to wish the least amount of suffering on your enemy. You have to. Well, you have to.
And consider me uncivilized then, because from The Hague to Donald Trump, I really wouldn't have cared what they did with the Nazis. I really.
I recognize that, and there are people who agree with you.
And quite frankly, I don't care what happens to Donald Trump physically, simply because of the tremendous hardship and death that he's caused. So whatever happens to him, happens to him. That's it. I'm not going to extend this to his family because that would be almost sociopathic on my part. I'm not going to go that far.
I don't know, man. You know what? They have made a point of being, in some ways, even more dangerous because they've pretended to a sort of normalcy and done everything they could to elevate this man's fascism.
I understand that. But he's it. He's the guy. He's the big cheese. He's what's doing it. Swallow, too wrong. He's the guy who's caused all this heartache himself directly. supporting characters, I have different degrees of hatred for them, but he's the main guy. He's the psychotic that's running this country. And
That's true.
therefore, to me, psychosis is either treated, or in the worst cases, and we can go through history and look at them, it's eliminated. And if COVID decides to eliminate them, I'm not going to shed any tears. I'm just not.
Well, tears versus, I have that sort of weird Wild West movie, Morricone movie kind of mindset that there's always the hero who needs to bring him to justice because he needs to see justice before he passes. I've always had that. I'm stuck with it.
I got that, but the other day when he came back from Walter Reed and he put on that Mussolini performance and he climbed the steps, you're going to tell me that you weren't laughing your ass off and that motherfucker was wheezing like,
It wasn't laughter. It was absolute. It was rage.
Oh,
I felt rage toward him.
No,
because first of all, he co-opted this. He has no right to it. Yeah. It's questionable to me whether the president should salute people anyway, but he has no right to it. Secondly, the mask pull off, the grimace, the stuff in the pocket, that's the stuff Andy Kaufman would do if he was still around pretending to be president.
Yeah.
And I think it is Andy Kaufman. That's why I don't wish any bad,
Maybe he's
if it's Kaufman, it's the role of a lifetime.
Yeah, it definitely is. I watched him up there, and of course everybody saw the same Mussolini that you and I did. That's the first.
Oh, yeah, hands, arms, and everything. It was really weird.
And he kept buttoning his jacket, and you could hear. You could literally hear it with
I know,
the bastard, and I'm looking at him and saying, just take that one final rattle and then we can get on with taking care of the country.
I think that's coming. I think the taking care of the country is coming. I think that it's nice to see that. You got to ask yourself this question, Rich. Do the Republicans have the worst strategists in the entire planet on their side? Or is it that you can't get these guys to fucking do anything?
They don't have any. Last night when I watched the debate, Kamala Harris, to me, her best line of the night was, that Joe Biden saved the auto industry and you voted against that. Right?
That was a good line. But the other thing I liked about it was, all of us have flaws, right?
Yeah.
And usually when you have a lot of opinions, you can come off as arrogant or you can come off as stepping on other people a little bit. And all my life, I've learned that I have a non-gender specific way of doing that. But it definitely has an effect on women, serious women in business that I dealt with, that it wouldn't have had with a man. And so as I learned to manage people, I realized that my way of assuming you can take it was something that had historically been something that happened to every woman over and over and over again. And their reaction to it was based on a history of men not taking them seriously. So I had to learn to speak a little differently to everyone, just to make sure that it affected my conversations with my female subordinates, we'll use the word because I did manage them, so that they didn't think that I was condescending to them or belligerent or something. And it was on me, it wasn't on them. Their reaction was perfectly legitimate based on their entire lives, right?
Yeah.
Men always just told them that what they thought was right or what they thought was wrong. No man ever discussed with them, right? Yeah. So I worked very hard on that after it was called to my attention by one of my favorite employees. She said, I know that you talk to everyone the same way. It doesn't bother me, but it really bothers so-and-so. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, that's fair. Pence can't stop. He almost said little lady last night. And if there's a woman in America who wasn't nuts and is already voting for Trump, who thought for 1 second about voting for a Republican ticket, Pence closed the door.
Well, I guess I didn't see it as blindingly as you did. I'm so used to Pence that I probably just missed it. But what I saw last night was first off, Pence to me is amongst his other flaws. Yes, his view and his treatment of women is, for lack of a better term, is bizarre to me. I mean, starting with the whole thing that he can't have lunch with a woman without his wife being there is simply bizarre. So I use that as ground zero when I move on from there. I didn't see that last night, thanks that you did. You're much more sensitive to it than I am. What I saw last night was when I see Mike Pence, there is a body inhabited by something that has absolutely no substance to it at all. Virtually no substance to it at all.
Andy looks like Klaatu.
It's true. It's true. And when he's up against an opponent who has substance, he's at a disadvantage. When he's up against a woman who has substance, he's at a bigger disadvantage. When he's up against a woman of color who has substance, he's at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, he's a dead man there.
When he's up against a woman of color who is a former prosecutor, he's fucking dead in the water because
he's substance free. I agree.
If she just sat there and didn't open her mouth the entire time, he would have lost that debate. If he attacked and she didn't say a word and just looked at him, he would have lost the debate. I mean, he's a man who let's get really, and I know we're extending our time here. Let's get really chauvinistic about this. Let's talk about this as two guys, right? With toxic masculinity. You want somebody next to you who you're going into a dark situation and you don't know what's going to happen. Who do you want next to you, Mike Pence or Kamala Harris?
That's easy. I'll take Kamala Harris any day.
Any fucking day.
I'll take Kamala Harris in an action movie that takes place in near Hamas. I mean, seriously.
She might not physically be as strong, but that motherfucker's not going to run away from me.
I wouldn't put a nickel on her not being. She's stronger than Pence. Come on. She probably benches 220. She looks strong.
Well, before we get too many women angry at us,
what's wrong with that?
I just think that the degree of character that exists in somebody like Kamala Harris and doesn't exist in somebody like Mike Pence is so overwhelming that these dissections of the debate last night are completely unnecessary to me.
Actually, I was surprised at how little dissecting actually took place. It was mostly a conversation about could Pence move the needle on something where that, as my brother said last night, anyone who doesn't know who they're voting for now shouldn't be allowed to vote.
No, there are undecideds out there.
How fucking stupid are you? Right?
Living under a rock. I mean, how can you possibly be undecided? And especially after last night, because that white-haired motherfucker with that fly on his head is a injection away from being president of the United States.
I know, and he doesn't have anything. I'm talking about somebody who could be Klaatu. But on another, just to take it to a different topic for just a second, LeBron James is the greatest basketball player that ever lived.
There was a smooth transition I've ever seen.
I wanted to tell you the truth on something today, that there's no fucking interpretation necessary. He is the greatest basketball player that ever lived. And Michael Jordan is below him.
Really?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jordan doesn't win any chance. Jordan never did what LeBron James has done, which is become a true team coach. Never did. And
I'm a big LeBron James fan, and I don't follow basketball at all. I'm a big LeBron James fan as a human being.
Just because he's a great guy. He's also a genius on the court. Yeah. I'm a basketball guy. And
but then again, I'm a huge
genius.
Charles Barkley fan too. And, you like
the round mound to rebound, do you?
I like honest people. I may not agree with everything that comes out of Charles Barkley's mouth, but he's always honest and he's using his platform creatively. I think that's great. I think LeBron James is one of the most influential people in the world right now.
LeBron James may be, and he started this in high school. Actually, his history is of a man who thinks, right, and knew that he knew from a young age that the prejudice toward young black players coming out of high school was that they didn't think, and he made sure that everybody knew early on that this was a stereotype he wasn't part of.
Well, you and I remember when there wasn't a black quarterback in the NFL.
That's absurd.
Because it was thought that they couldn't think.
That's it. One of the great racist things of all time is to assign great physicality to black athletes and take away the brain. Yeah, that's just shocking when you think about Bill Russell or you think about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who has turned into a thinker. He always was a thinker, but he writes some of the best essays about sports ethics you will ever read.
And I always found Bill Russell to be one of the great speakers.
Oh yeah.
I could listen to Bill Russell all day long.
And I saw Magic Johnson speak once at something when I was still in corporate America. They had something. Magic came in and talked about the work he was doing in LA to try to put businesses in the communities, because he said, charity this is a form of charity, obviously, but it's a form of charity that generates something that will make it a community. So his movie theater, his entertainment complexes, the stores and everything that he put his money and time into. And the thing about Johnson is he knows he's a charming motherfucker.
Oh God, yeah.
And he's no fool. He knows how to use it. He knows how to make money on it. He knows how to lift up other people with it.
Yeah,
but
it's natural. I mean, this is.
Yeah, he's got the thing that Ray Charles had. You just sit down and everybody goes, "Hey, let's hear what that guy has to say."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I saw that, and when I started to think about who I've seen speak who has that, it's remarkable how many of them are Black Americans. That ability to relate to a ton of people when you're the minority culture, that's amazing.
You and I are both atheists, but I think
Yeah.
a lot of what you're talking about comes from the fact that so much of the Black community is centered around church. And
Could be.
Yeah, I think that connection is there because of that. Now, I'm never one to give churches credit much, but in that sense, I think that that's probably a part of it. Before we go way over, and we probably lost half our audience already.
Yeah, we probably have to do this. Well, we probably have to do this again anyway because it froze, but that's all right.
No, don't worry about that. And if people don't like the fact that it froze every once in a while, fuck them. Who cares?
That seems to be our motto. I mean, I was going to go with he had a hat, but I think fuck them if they don't is probably a better motto.
If freezing bothers you, fuck you. I think that should be the tagline of Nate and Rick from now on. I'll see if I can get a graphic that we can put behind our heads.
No.
You will pass along, everything as far as where you are right now to your dad, and
I will.
And
I will. I mean, we're not a public family that way, but enough people know that my father he's not well.
But if I may, just in case our quote audience, who's ever listening, doesn't know, Nathan's dad is Marvin Bell, and if you have not read any of Marvin Bell's writings, you are depriving yourself of one of the great joys in this world. I would strongly suggest that you Google or whatever the hell you want to do, Marvin Bell, and obtain some of his poetry. It'll help you. I trust me.
That's the thing about my father. And during this time period, we've learned that the number of people that I always suspected this, but he's modest in an interesting way. I suspected a lot of people have been helped by him. And what we've found is that it's many, 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 many more than you could even imagine.
Oh, I'm certain. And that if it wasn't for COVID, that I would be there. I mean, we're sitting next to you, so we'd be doing this side.
The beauty of COVID is it may have kept everyone from visiting, which is really one of the wishes here. Yeah. So I mean that as a joke, kind of, but
no, it's serious. It's serious.
We're doing as well as can be done for a bunch of bad Buddhists and atheists,
Well, and make sure you give Leslie a hug when you see her for me.
A virtual hug, yeah.
A virtual hug. I'll do the same with Penny.
I'm actually sitting in his writing studio for most of his life right now.
And I
This
see
is out back of the house. And it hasn't really changed from when I was 8 years old, 9 years old, and we moved into this house. It's interesting.
And wait, before we go, and then we're going to sign off, I promise. Did Marvin always write on a typewriter, or did he ever do any of his writing by longhand?
Oh, no, my father is the world's earliest convert to computers, dude.
Oh, cool.
So my father, like me, as you know, I went to digital recording as soon as I found out it was easier, sounded just as good, and was a more effective way to process a lot of material. As soon as I went to digital as soon as I could do it effectively. My father, as soon as computers came along, he believed in the more you write, the better.
Mm.
The easier it is to write, the more you write.
Cool.
And this, I agree with you on the longhand with the fountain pen for certain things. But if you're going to write all the time, and you're going to write, I'm the same way. I do almost everything on the computer just because. I take notes longhand, but by the time I get the song and I'm working on it seriously, it's in the computer. His lesson to all of his students was always, you have to free yourself up to write, however that works. And if it means you write on a computer, if it means you write on an iPhone, it doesn't make any difference. You just write.
Here's the difference. I'm a writer. You're a good writer. Your dad's an excellent writer. So
we're not going to go there, man.
I think a writer, and you don't love it any more than I do. I love writing. I absolutely love writing.
I love writing.
Yeah. So I think we'll cut off now. I think our next program, I can't read that. Move it in front of the camera. Okay. I think our next program, we have to somehow work sex into it just to build our audience.
You think we need more sex?
Yeah, I think we definitely need more sex. It can be oblique references or head-on references, but we got to talk about male parts and women parts.
Why don't we just call it? Why don't we get it now and title it? We'll call it "The Clitoris: Myth or Fact."
Well, you see, neither one of us have a great deal of expertise in either myth or fact on that. So, we can both bullshit about it if we want to. But that's a good subject. That's a good subject. It really is. It's something that, you and I grew up with the fact that the size of a man's penis was of some import. I think that's a subject we can talk about. With actually, you and I can talk about that as sort of.
Could you pick a subject more impossible to get to the end of?
Now you see, you can tell you're a poet, because if you want to get to the end of dicks, that's a tough subject. Maybe we can bring in a Moyle who can talk about the end of dicks.
Listen, Tom Petty was big when I was still playing in a band in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
And every band I ever met at the end of a show, when they were fed up with the audience, would sing "Stop Dragging My Dick Around." Yeah. So, it's pretty much, men are unfortunately, it's like, what's the joke? There's so many jokes that we could do. We could do an hour of dumb jokes.
You and I could sit here for half an hour if we prepared for it and give all the different names that we have ascribed to the male member. Throughout.
Somewhere in America, there's a guy who calls it his Mike Pence, and I'm worried about that guy.
Yeah, that guy should seek help immediately. All right, we're going to sign off now. Rick and Nate and Rick are going to sign off, but we will be back whether you want us to or not. That's the whole secret, whether you want us to or not.
That's a good line. You can't get away from us. And
what was the other line we had? Oh,
you had a hat.
Yeah. No, if freezing bothers you, fuck you.
Listen, man, I don't know what you had to do that made you change the time, but it better be important. I'll see you next week.
Actually, it's a doctor's appointment. So.
Oh, well, fuck that. Don't go. Why don't you just get the $1 million COVID treatment and beat this thing before you even have it?
Well, I also have to answer that phone. So.
All right. See you later, brother.
Take care, boy.